The following is a full interview from the Border Battle with King and CJ. Tune into the Border Battle Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 11 to noon on Suddenlink Channel 112, YouTube Live, or OSU Student Radio KXZY. Welcome back into Studio 318 here in the Paul Miller Journalism Building at Oklahoma State University. You're listening to the Border Battle with King and CJ. I'm King, he's CJ. Between us, we have Oklahoma State University head coach Mike Boynton. Coach, thanks so much for taking out a couple minutes and joining us today.
Well, thanks you guys for having me. With names like King and CJ, it sounds like something that's really made for TV, which is why we're here. But I need another cool nickname, so I'll work on that for the next time I come on the show.
All right, sounds good to us. So starting it off, season's wrapping up here. You've had a week or so to kind of chew on it or think about it a little bit more. What is your first reaction, just based on your first year? I know you sent out the tweet. Just based on your first year as the head man in Stillwater.
Wow, it was a heck of a year. Just a little over 365 days ago, about a week now since marked the year of me being named the head coach, and it was extremely fun. It was a lot of great moments. There were some stressful times as well, but all in all, I thought it was a tremendous year for our program. We sit back a year ago, and a week ago from now, and there was some wonder how stable this program was and where the program was going under my leadership and whether I could handle the responsibilities of this great program. And a year later, I think there's a sense of optimism and some pride and passion that's been restored in Gallagher, and certainly hope to continue to build that with our team as we move forward.
Now, the normal OSU kind of words are loyal and true, but you mentioned a couple things, passion, things like that. When we're talking about, coaches always talk about building a culture, and you have the hashtag Let's Work. That's kind of been your motto from the start. How do you have a lot of these coaches, whether it be high school, grade school, stuff like that have these catchphrases. How hard is it, and how do you take it from a hashtag, from a words on the chalkboard before a game, to actually having players that will carry it out and building it into something that's actually visible on the court or visible in practice or in film room? How hard is that, and how do you do it?
It's interesting you say that. Let's Work really just is a way to phrase the way I approach things. And the work is a part of it, and it's something that I take a lot of pride in, and working really hard at everything I do, putting a lot of effort into it. But the let's part is the part that kind of gets lost. Let us work is really what it's about, because it's about a lot of people, and it starts with having the right people in place. You can put a phrase together to mean anything or to get people excited, but unless you have the right people doing the things that you want to do to have success, or that you believe are going to give us a chance to have success, it won't happen. And we were very fortunate as a staff, and me as a first-year head coach, that I had really high-character kids on our team and in our locker room every day. Then I had really great people on our staff that were able to take a mentality and a phrase and put it into work to get a group of kids to buy into working hard for each other and not being focused on whatever individual goals that they may be told are really important. So it was really gratifying to see that kind of come together, and it culminated in, even though we didn't necessarily reach our goal of making a tournament, and our ultimate goal is to be playing this coming weekend in the Final Four and compete for a national championship, for us to get to the NIT and have those 3 home games and see, even on spring break, how people responded to what this program and these kids did, shows that there's a culture here already. We didn't have to establish a culture. We just had to re-identify ourselves with our culture. And our culture here has always been one that has a lot of pride in our basketball program. Some of people's greatest memories of this university is spending time in Gallagher Arena. And our hope is that the future will continue to feel the same way.
So as you said, being a first-year head coach and getting players to play as a team, not as individuals, how much of a challenge was that for you as a coach to help them or to keep them from blocking out that outside noise that started, throughout the year in the beginning, and then, when the tournament was starting to come around and, not good enough? How challenging was that for you to kind of keep your players in check?
It's probably the biggest challenge that we have as coaches now. There's so much access to noise, and I call it noise because it's not really information. So many people, speak, through computers or phones or whatever, and they're not. Sometimes they're not real people. We're starting to find out
Right.
that these aren't even real people. But even when they are, some of it is just with not a whole lot of knowledge. So we got to try to sift through all the false information that's being spewed out there, and make sure our guys are able to focus on the things that are genuine, the things that are real, and the things that'll help them individually have success. The most probably the most important thing that really happened in my life was I was able to be a part of a team for a long time, and I became very aware of what it meant to be a teammate. And that means you sacrifice your individual pride sometimes, maybe your individual goals and aspirations for the betterment of the overall group. And we had a group of guys who were able to do that, but it's a daily message because their devices tell them differently. Their friends at home tell them differently, that it's about them scoring 20 points or getting more minutes or shots. When really we just talk about playing really hard for the guy next to you, being willing to take a charge or dive on a loose ball because it means enough to do that for our team to have a chance to win. And, it takes a daily effort to make sure that those messages are the ones that they take, because we can't control what they hear. But that those are the messages that they take to heart and try to act out in their daily lives.
So then how much did that help having, Solomon, Carroll, Shine, and Smith, help embody that, help kind of, watching them embody it? Also, Solomon's always been a, grind out. He's going to do the little things, the dirty work. Does that kind of help with those four guys, especially jumping on board and helping lead the way as well?
There's no question. You always have to start with your veteran leadership. And I say veteran because it's not always seniors. Sometimes it's a sophomore who's just been through it a lot as a freshman and now has a little bit more experience than some of the freshmen coming in. But for us to have a guy like Mitchell Solomon who, there's no one who it meant more to put that jersey on every day than it did for him. His parents both went to school here. He's got siblings who go to school here, and so he's got a great amount of pride in representing this program and this university, and to see him do it with all-out effort every single day is something that was hard to question. And so when he was able to go out and say, there's a guy getting out of line, I'm going to help make sure he knows that he's not doing the right thing, you couldn't get much pushback on Mitchell because they know it was coming from the right place. And he was going to be doing that himself. So you needed to start with those guys believing that that's important, then doing it, and then making sure that other guys do it as well.
So, we talk about some of the off the court stuff, but on the court, I mean, before this year, I think 19-57 over the past several years against top 25 AP top 25 teams. Your team this year goes 6-5 against such teams. We'll get into maybe a little bit the away games and some of those games. But what was it about this team that made them a winning team against these better teams when it's been such a struggle against the top teams in the conference, the Kansases and the Texas Techs this year, when they struggle against those teams, and this team didn't, played well against Texas A&M in a loss and beat Florida State on a neutral court. What was the difference with this team?
I think it was just resiliency. Long before we ever played a game, we had to deal with some adversity. First, they were told that their head coach had no business coaching them and didn't deserve the opportunity to have the job. And then we get into the season, and the expectations were that they weren't going to be any good at all. And before that, they had worked pretty hard from between June, July, August, September before the polls started to come out. But it's been an awesome experience watching those guys just really focus on each other. And so that success on the court wasn't something that just happened. The day we took the court in Lawrence, it was something that they believed that they had earned because of the work that they put in from the time they came together in June all through the summer. And even as distractions happened and we didn't have Jeff to start the season, and the investigation came, and that put a little bit of a cloud over the start of our season, these kids just kept focusing on, how do we continue to believe in each other? How do we continue to fight for Oklahoma State basketball and what this program represents? And I commend all those kids for doing it and coming out and having the success that they did.
Now, with the Big 12, preseason poll has you last. I'm sure it put a chip on the shoulder of all the players. Does it put a chip on your shoulder as a coach, or is that something you just say, you recognize it, but is that something that's just the kids put on their shoulders?
Yeah, I think I have a chip on my shoulder every day. I grew up and wasn't expected to have much success in the sports realm, but was able to just work hard and overcome all those obstacles. And whether people believed in me or not, I say it this way: I want to have success because I'm a competitor. I don't need somebody to tell me that I can't do something for me to work hard and try to do it. I like winning because I hate losing. And so I don't need someone to tell me that we can't win for me to be motivated to try to go out and do it.
Awesome. Well, we'll take a quick break. We're going to be right back with Coach Boynton. He's going to stick around and join us for another segment. Talk a little bit more about the season, this past season, and look forward to the future with Coach Boynton. You're listening to The Border Battle with King and CJ on OSU Student Radio KXCY. Welcome back into Studio 318 here in the Paul Miller Journalism Building at Oklahoma State University. You're listening to The Border Battle with King and CJ. He's CJ. I'm King. Thank you so much for joining us. You're watching Suddenlink Channel 112, YouTube Live, Border Battle On Demand, Facebook.com/Border Battle Show, or OSU Student Radio, KXZY. Again, still joined by OSU head coach Mike Boynton. Thanks for sticking around for the second segment with us. We appreciate that. So we saw the highlights there, those watching on TV, saw the highlights of the win at Kansas. There were some inconsistencies during that stretch. You had Kansas and Baylor and West Virginia, Texas Tech, and Kansas State, I believe, was the 5-game stretch. Is there something you take away from that heading into year 2 where, if you string a couple wins together, the RPI looks a little bit better for the committee or whatever that is. But is there some lessons you take forward as a coach from that span of games?
Yeah, there's always lessons to learn. The RPI is kind of a flawed metric in and of itself because it takes things that are already built in and then extracts them and measures them on their own again. Like the non-conference RPI portion, your strength of schedule is already milked into the process of coming up with your RPI. Well, then they extract your non-conference strength of schedule and makes it an additional component. But they don't do it for your conference schedule. So it's kind of flawed in that way, and I think they're going away from that. So I don't think about it in regards to the RPI. I know that our league will be really good every year, so I'm going to have 18 games on my schedule that'll be as difficult as anybody will have. The non-conference, we'll continue to try to challenge ourselves and bring a marquee team into Gallagher every year. We're playing an exempt event that gives us multiple games against pretty good competition. And then we'll also try to play another really good team on the road and try to have home and homes against 2 teams, and that way we got our schedule balanced from year to year. But learning the lessons through this league was a great challenge. This league had 4 teams in the Elite 8, 4 teams in the Sweet 16 and 3 in the Elite 8, and those are the teams that we got to try to compete against every year. So first of all, you do that in recruiting. It's a great lesson, and you want to have enough athleticism, talent, and depth to be able to get through the rigors of a Big 12 schedule. The other thing is you got to be adaptable. The one thing you learn through that stretch of games is a lot of teams in our conference play very differing styles. So we played, for instance, against, I think it was Baylor, and they played zone for 38 minutes on a Wednesday, and then on Saturday we went to West Virginia, and they pressed us for 38 minutes. And so you got to try to win both games. You got to try to win them in different ways, and you have to be adaptable in both your personnel and your scheme.
Real quick, I want to ask you, something Bob Huggins has never done, Eddie Sutton never did it. Some of these great coaches that have coached in the Big 12 never beaten Kansas twice. Was there anything Bill Self said to you after that second game, or anyone shot you a message and said, what an incredible thing that is? Obviously, the first time it's ever been done when he's been at Kansas.
Nothing specific. Coaches are always respectful of each other. The coaches in our conference all are really high character people, and we've all shared some of the struggles, similar struggles as we've got to this point in our careers. But I think they all understand how difficult the next guy's job is because they understand how hard theirs is. And so there's an appreciation when you do have success that's kind of unprecedented, that there's just a respect level accomplished there. So I think the coaches in our league certainly respect what our staff did and what our kids did, and know that we're going to be a tough out for years to come. And as we continue to recruit good athletes that'll work hard and want to be a big part of this program, we'll continue to have some of those successes.
So then, talking about a little bit of recruiting and depth, and is it kind of a fair point then to make like your front court's maybe the most concerned with, having Sema, Gasson, and kind of McGriff as your your front court mates, so to speak? Is it almost fair to say that front court's kind of the biggest concern in a sense of for recruiting wise or for depth, to make sure that you have guys that can back up at those positions?
Yeah, as a coach, and certainly as a head coach now, I have a hard time making one thing more important than another. Every position in our program is really vital. The most important thing that'll happen between now and next season is the guys that are returning, that they improve. The time between now and, let's say, September, those summer months we get, those are critical moments for where this program is going to be able to go. Certainly, we want to continue to recruit high-level guys, and certainly there's a lot of high-level recruits that we're on. But those guys will still have a learning curve when they get here. And as they come along, you need them to be aided by guys who already know your system, already understand what the expectation is as far as the way we work, the way we maybe approach shoot-arounds or scouting reports and things like that. So, yeah, it's very important that we address all of our personnel issues, but the most important thing is player development over the summer.
So then could you say, too, it's kind of a nice thing to have the table set with such a core group as being juniors, like you said, the upper class. Does that help then, like you said, to help them improve and stuff, knowing that, they're only going to be juniors, you have them 2 more years, hopefully, as well?
Yeah, I mean, you think about guys like 2 guys in particular, Cam McGriff and Lundy Waters, both started a lot of games this year. And they both played a lot as freshmen. So their leadership with the young guys we bring in, or even if they're transfers with guys who don't know our system, will be critical to how those guys are acclimated into how they can have success within our program next year. But at the same time, there's other guys who maybe even if they didn't play as much over here the last 2 years, they'll have opportunities now because we did lose 2 guys who started in the backcourt. A guy in Shine who played a lot, even though he didn't start all the time, was a very key part of our program. So there's a lot of opportunity available for whoever is going to be on the roster next year to be able to step up to the forefront and be a leader.
Overall, since you've become a head coach, there's kind of maybe a sort of a divide in college basketball for graduate transfers. You coming in, how important are grad transfers for a new coach when you don't have necessarily the high school recruits in the building yet, or not with enough experience to contribute? Because obviously Kendall Smith came in this year and was, to a certain extent, a godsend for the team, stepping in at point guard and playing, pretty well throughout the Big 12 season.
Yeah, no, it's huge. That graduate transfer market is one that we do a lot of research and digging on, because it's not just getting a talented player. It's getting a guy who can fit into what you're trying to build, and a guy who doesn't just have the mindset that this is an opportunity for me to play at Kansas and then that means I can have chances to get drafted, but want to come here and take a program who was picked 10th, put them in position to finish 6th in this league and be close as we were to getting an NCAA tournament. Kendall Smith certainly was a big part of that. And he had some struggles this year, but certainly was a big piece of some of the big wins we had big shots against Iowa State and Kansas that will always be remembered, and certainly against OU to send the game in overtime that people will always remember for a long time, even though he was only here for 1 season. So those guys have a great opportunity to make an impact, although a short one, and help us build ourselves into a national championship contender.
So to get a little bit away from basketball, being from Brooklyn, New York, what's it kind of been like to transition to, kind of Stillwater out in the middle of nowhere? Obviously the traffic isn't the same. What's that transition been like?
Well, the fortunate part is I didn't come here from Brooklyn. That would have been pretty extreme. I was in Nacogdoches, Texas, which neither one of you guys probably have ever heard of. That's where Stephen F. Austin is before I came here. And it's quite a bit smaller than Stillwater. So this is kind of a step up for my family and I. But my biggest transition was leaving Brooklyn and going to Columbia, South Carolina when I went to college. And so that was kind of a shell shock. You go outside at 6 and you're used to people being out and about and no one's around. So just culturally you adapt. But I've really enjoyed the smaller town feel now. Got young kids. I've got a wife. I don't really hang out as much. And so it was a great opportunity for us to just be settled and be able to be a little bit more at peace with things.
Real quick, I want to leave the folks off with, I dug this one back up. I read it in February 13th. It's from Bill Haston, TulsaWorld.com. He talked about a couple recruiting trips he went on after the big win at Kansas and the big win in Morgantown against West Virginia, where you were either flying out to Virginia, I believe it was, or coming back to the BOK to watch a couple local teams there. What was that like? I mean, why do that? Why put yourself in that stressful situation?
Well, it's not stressful. It's part of the job. It's something that's very necessary. I can't be a good coach if we don't have really talented players, and certainly know that no matter how hard I work, it's always about the kids. So it was important for us to get in front of those kids and their families, particularly after being able to put our program in a place where they were exposed to some high-level success.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you,
we know
guys. Absolutely.
Oklahoma State basketball is in a good situation for the foreseeable future. Thanks for joining us again. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the MLB and what went on in L.A. We'll get to that next. You're listening to The Border Battle with King and CJ on OSU Student Radio KXCY.